Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Driven Wyld. Today we are talking about Doordash Driver Exposed, how tips are being stolen remastered. So not too long ago, we actually had a live stream with Bud Soda, and we were going over a few audio clips that were about tips getting stolen from a Doordash driver. And unfortunately, there was a lot of mishaps and troubleshooting problems that we really should have had figured out beforehand. But we were able to at least hold the live streams. That said, there was a lot of things that were happening during this live stream that we wanted to at least remove and make a more clean version of it. So with that said, we are talking about everything that is being said in this live stream, the cleaner version of it, and everything in between. So with that said, I hope you enjoy.
Greetings, this is Driver Dan. I hope everyone's doing well out there. I'd like to thank you if you are tuning into this live stream now, and also thank you if you're listening at some later point. And my thanks also goes out to Joe of Driven Wyld and also Bud Soda for allowing me the opportunity to explain my situation. Now, a lot of you out there are Dashers. A lot of you have probably visited different internet communities pertaining to DoorDash, such as Facebook. They have their own DoorDash communities, Reddit, Twitter, now known as X, and of course there's a lot of YouTube channels out there as well. One of the common themes that you will come up with is typically someone claiming that DoorDash has shorted them on tips or stolen their tips. Now, I cannot speak for every person out there, but it's been my observation that in most cases, if not all, I don't know, that this was actually no fault of DoorDash. What has occurred is that a customer placed an order through a third-party app. Let me give you an example. If someone was online and they visited, let's say, a pizza restaurant, and they placed their order online through the restaurant's webpage or through their app, they place an order, let's say they leave a $10 tip, the restaurant receives that order, and let's say they're short on drivers, and so they decide to contract that particular delivery out to DoorDash. Before doing so, again, it's my understanding that they can actually alter the tip amounts before sending that order to DoorDash for delivery. In other words, if someone were to leave a $10 tip, they could actually turn that into a $5 tip for the DoorDasher and also keep $5 for their employment staff. So when the DoorDasher receives the order, it shows $5. Now let's say that the Dasher picks that order up, delivers it, and the customer says, "I really appreciate your service, and I left you a $10 tip." And after completing the order, the Dasher looks down at the app and it shows $5. They may be under the impression that DoorDash shorted them on tips. But in fairness, that is actually not the fault of DoorDash. That would be because it went through a third-party app where they can, although I may not think ethically, they can legally do this. So the DoorDasher may be left with the impression that DoorDash shorted them on tips when it was actually not the case at all. My situation entirely differs. It was not a result of that type of scenario. In fact, after many weeks, DoorDash actually admitted that I had missing tips and paid me. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me go ahead and back up. I picked up a stacked order, and of course, for those not familiar with a stacked order, that's when you pick up either at multiple locations and deliver to multiple locations, or one location delivering to two drop-offs, different variables, but I think you kind of get the idea. So I picked up the assignment, delivered it, and after completion, I had a question about one of the customer drop-offs. So I called DoorDash support and had a question I asked them about. And while they were recapping the order, they also inadvertently mentioned the tip amount, which typically you wouldn't think twice about. However, when they read off that tip amount, and I looked at my payout earnings app, the tip amount they mentioned happened to be twice the amount of what I received. In other words, as a Dasher, we are supposed to receive 100% of the tip, but in this case, I'd only received 50%. I was a little bit concerned about this, to say the least. So what I did before this call ended was I asked the DoorDash support representative for the event ID number for this call. And for those not familiar with what that is, every time you make a call into DoorDash, it has its own unique ID number. And they do that because if you call back following up on a situation, they could reference the previous call with that unique ID number. And I also asked for the representative's name because I wanted to document this entirely because it was questionable to say the least. And so I did that. I got that information. Before ending the call, I asked the support representative, how can I retrieve the remaining 50% of my tip? And I was instructed that after my shift ended, to close out the DoorDash app, wait 30 minutes, and then reopen the app, and the remaining 50% of my tip should appear. Well, I tried that actually several times, and it did not occur. I didn't think very much about it. I thought, well, let me try the next day. So I waited the next day, opened up the app again, and once again, the remaining balance did not show up. So about 24 hours, I guess, after that incident occurred, I called DoorDash support again. This time, I'm at my house, and not only did I get the event ID number and the DoorDash support person's name for this next call, being at my house, I also took another measure. Now, when you call DoorDash support, you know there's a recording, and it says this session may be recorded for quality assurance and training purposes. Now, it does not say DoorDash may record this call. It does not say we may record this call. It does not say you may not record this call. The recording states this call may be recorded. So with that mentioned, I took them up on that opportunity and recorded the call for quality assurance and training purposes. So I speak with the second representative from DoorDash, following up on the previous call, said that I had not received the remaining 50% of my entitled tip. She pulls up the order, she recaps it. In fact, she recaps the other tipping customer as well. Well, I discovered also with that customer, I had only received 50% of the tip. So now we have two customers that tipped, and I only received 50% from both customers. So I'm like, how do we resolve this? How do I move forward? And I said, I'd already refreshed my app. That didn't work. These are tips that I've earned, and these are tips that I deserve. So this DoorDash support person instructs me that they will actually send me an email, and I will send them a screen capture of the earnings that are displayed. And once they receive it, they will look into it, which I was under the impression once they receive that they will resolve the matter. I shouldn't have presumed so quickly. So anyway, I sent them the screen capture. And I tell you what, before going further on this, I'm going to go ahead and take a break so that way if Joe or Bud Soda or any of the viewers out there have any questions, you can talk amongst yourself and I'll return.
So if you could pull up the comment, I don't know if you can share it on the screen, but Josh commented on one of our videos, Josh Y305 with the UDM. They live stream and have a show together. Go check out that show we were on, by the way, guys. He said the restaurants can take a portion or do whatever they want with it, and there's not much we can do about it. But it's like, well, if that's the case, they need to clearly outline that in the contract, make it apparent to the customer, make it apparent to the app they're working with, and make it apparent to the drivers in the partner restaurants. So all parties involved need to know. If they don't know, in my opinion, that is not right. It's manipulating the tip. And I know UDM years ago had a live stream saying, well, these restaurants want to split tips. Should we do 50-50, 75-25, something like that? I mean, I'm okay as long as they're explicitly open about it. When a customer puts a tip and they think it's going to the delivery driver, I have customers in the past say to me, I don't put it in the app because I know that it doesn't always go to you. I guess they had issues with one of the merchants back in my home region, but they wouldn't tell me which one. But this was quite some time ago now. So they just cashed it and bet on the amount going up enough to get it quickly. So basically I took it at $1 per mile and I was going that way anyway. So it was $6 base pay. They gave me a $10 cash tip. And $6 for 6 miles. I would have took it at, 10-12 bucks. There's a reason customers are tipping certain amounts. If they know they live so far away, they know a $10 tip on a 5 or 6 mile order is probably going to get a driver to take it quickly. And then when these restaurants take it away from the driver, redistribute it to the sellers and put the order back out, that means it's not going to get taken quickly. That customer is going to be unhappy because they're going to be waiting even longer on their food.
The customer intended to tip the driver. Like you say yourself, it's intended for the driver. It's not intended for the restaurant. It's not intended for the Papa John's franchise or whatever franchise it's for. It's not intended for DoorDash's corporate office. It's intended for the driver. I usually don't even believe people when people say they tip in cash after service because we've seen too many damn times where it doesn't. But then those people who actually do mean that are put into the same category, and then they feel as if they are victimized because of what other people are doing. And there's a point to be said about that. But the reality is, it doesn't change our position, and DoorDash knows it, which is why they let him get away with it, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, I agree. So they need to differentiate and be transparent about it. It's not like they're sitting getting takeout. Sometimes if it's a larger order, people will tip on takeout. They ask every time anyway these days. Or if you're eating in, obviously most people intend to tip unless you're a jerk. But, they intend it for the person delivering it because they're doing the service. It needs to go to the driver because I don't know how many times there's a reason they order. They don't live down the block from the restaurant. They want it delivered to their house because they live 3, 4, 5 miles away.
Okay, this is part 2, and just to give you a quick recap, I work for DoorDash. I was subjected to missing tips. This was not something that DoorDash called me about and said, "Oops, driver Dan, looks like we made a mistake and we owe you money." Nothing like that at all. I'd actually called DoorDash support for an entirely different reason regarding a particular assignment, and only after that support representative recapped the order, which included reading off the tip amount, was it discovered that I only received half the tip to which I was entitled. In other words, instead of receiving 100% of the tip, I only received 50%. And so I've been trying to pursue this to get it resolved. Now at this point, I'm on my 3rd call, and the 2 previous DoorDash support people actually revealed that I'd only received 50% of the tips that I was entitled to. So on the 2nd call, I was told to send a screen capture of my earnings, and they would look into it. And I thought, well, at that point, they'll just resolve the matter. But having not heard back, I made another call, spoke to a representative, and he was very professional. He pulled up the information, and the one thing that was a little different was when he read off the tip amounts. These tip amounts were different than what I was told by the 2 previous DoorDash support people. He read off tip amounts that reflected my earnings on my app. There was no discrepancy at this point. And I can't make any type of conclusion, but I do wonder if once I sent a screen capture to DoorDash, if someone in that department went in and made alterations to those accounts so it would only reflect the amount that was reflected on my app, leave me with no grounds to move forward. Fortunately, as you may recall in the previous segment, I mentioned that I had recorded these conversations, and so I played this current DoorDash support person an excerpt from the previous call where the support person had mentioned amounts of my tips which were twice the amount than what his current records were indicating. At that moment, the DoorDash support person paused and said that there had been a change to the tips. That's right. He acknowledged that there had been a change to the tips, and I have that recorded as well. So I said, how do we move forward? And he said he would have someone look into this, and I would be getting a call back from a supervisor from that team. Well, eventually, I did get a call back, and I spoke with this representative, and wasn't a really pleasant conversation. I was talked over, interrupted. Anytime I tried to ask a direct question, I would get roundabout, ambiguous responses. This went on for longer than 30 minutes, so finally I said, I have a question that requires a yes or no response. Does DoorDash have the capability to alter tips? Her response was yes. So at this point, I'm like, how do we move forward? And I was told that they would look into it and that I would be getting a call back. Well, this went on for quite a while. And just for you listeners out there, you might be thinking, well, it's probably just a few bucks. Why are you wasting this much time? And that's true. But then I wonder if this has happened to other DoorDashers, and I believe from what I've read, there's between 6 and 7 million DoorDashers out there. So let's say there's 7 million DoorDashers out there. And let's say that each Dasher has had a situation like mine. Not where DoorDash calls you back and says, we noticed a mistake, but one where you would have never known about this had you not made a call unrelated to the situation and had it revealed. So in other words, let's say that each Dasher's had $3 that was compromised on one of their tips. $3 times 7 million is $21 million. $21 million that the Dashers did not receive that would be in the hands of DoorDash. Now, I'm not saying that's occurred. I'm giving you a hypothesis, but that's a lot of money. And not only that, but I am a principled person, and so out of principle, and I had the free time at home, I followed up any way I could to try to get this resolved. So I made many calls in that duration, not getting any headway, and finally, almost a month later, I receive a call. I'm at a coffee shop. I can't record this call, so I let the call go to voicemail. And on the voicemail, it is a call from a DoorDash supervisor who acknowledges that on that particular assignment, there were missing tips. Those are her words. And that I would be receiving the remaining balance for those missing tips. And so I have that voice message recorded as well, still in my possession. And I also took a screen capture of the earnings that came in later that I was supposed to receive on the day of that delivery assignment. So I've got that done. So at this point you might think, okay, case closed. But not entirely. Because I started thinking about this. Like I said, it's not like DoorDash called me and said, Driver Dan, we noticed a mistake and we want to pay you what you deserve. It wasn't as if when I called DoorDash support for an entirely different reason and they pulled up the information and said, oh, looks like there's a discrepancy here. Let's work on that and pay you. Didn't happen either. I called for an entirely different reason, and inadvertently, when they were reading off the information for this particular customer, did they read off also the tip amount? And that's when it raised an eyebrow and I realized, hey, something's wrong here. So this was an entire fluke discovery. Now, I have over 9,000 deliveries. Am I to believe that of my 9,000 plus deliveries, that this only occurred once, and I happened to discover it by a fluke? Those seem like almost unbelievable odds to me. Also, unbelievable odds. How about you, if you're a DoorDasher? Do you think this may not have happened to you also? It's just kind of hard for me to believe that this only happened once in DoorDash history, and of my 9,000 plus deliveries, I just happened to come across that one situation. Seems almost unbelievable to me. I'm going to continue this, but I'm going to take a break so that way Joe and Bud Setta or any listeners out there or viewers out there have any comments, I'll return.
A lot of it's what we're reading, but I will disagree with Dan where once the merchant takes that amount of the tip away, it's not as if DoorDash has that money. To pay that money out, they have to. If DoorDash had to take $20 million and reimburse Dashers, that would be $20 million out of their pocket. It's not like they had the money in the first place because the money got redistributed. And then,
Bud, you're breaking up.
oh, yeah.
We're going to wait for Bud to get into a better reception area. What Bud was saying is that if it's the situation where a restaurant can alter a tip on their end, it's not like DoorDash has the money. And that is also going under the assumption that that was the method in which the order was taken. And yeah, if that's the case, then the restaurant has the money, not DoorDash at the moment. If that's the case, then the restaurant needs to be held accountable, not DoorDash. Unfortunately, DoorDash does need to be held accountable too. Number one, for even allowing this to happen to begin with. And number two, probably more importantly than all of that, it's not like DoorDash has never done this before. DoorDash just settled a lawsuit recently for $11.25 million for Illinois drivers that have literally lost so much money because they were stealing tips. And that was an old pay model. But That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. That doesn't mean it's not $2 there, $3 there. And it's from these larger payout orders to where we wouldn't think twice otherwise. We would just be happy with the $17 tip when it should have been 20. We would be happy with a $7 tip when it should have been 10. We would be happy with the $12 tip when it should have been 15. But nevertheless, we're the ones who are supposed to get that money. It's $2 there, $3 there. That adds up quickly.
They need to be held accountable on all fronts. And I was playing devil's advocate. It's not if DoorDash has the money, but they also need to hold the merchants accountable. And if they can't hold the merchants accountable, then they're held liable. They would still have to pay out that money. And I don't know, I can't confirm nor deny. It was a rumor, but when they first started trying Earn by Time in certain areas, it would show the tip. It just showed you a payout. People were speculating that they were, doing a tip pool like they used to when they're doing Earn by Time. And redistributing whatever little tips were on that model around. And that's why they decided to still show full breakdown. And you have to hit an arrow down for it now because they like to hide it to not get you, because if an order comes in immediately, you're not going to see whether there was a tip or not. So I think that's also a deceptive practice. They got to go back to where it shows the full breakdown every time, no matter what. It should be law, like the Colorado law. I keep saying it, but it should be a similar model to that law because that was literally written by someone who did this line of work.
This is part 3, and just to offer a recap for anyone now tuning in, I work for DoorDash. I had a delivery assignment. I called after that assignment was completed. I had a question and called DoorDash support. And when speaking with a DoorDash support representative and they recapped the order, they also mentioned the tip payout amount. And when they did, it raised an eyebrow because I noticed that the tip amount that the DoorDash support person mentioned was twice the amount than what I actually received. Now, it wasn't as though I suspected DoorDash of any type of situation like this. I called for an entirely different reason, and inadvertently, when the DoorDash support person recapped the order mentioning the tip amount, only then did I discover the discrepancy. Now, it actually was after calling the second time, and they recapped actually both paying tipped orders in that stacked order, it was revealed that I actually, on both customers, only received 50% of the entitled tips. And it's not as though DoorDash called me and said, "Oh, Driver Dan, we discovered a problem and we want to pay you immediately." Not at all. I discovered this by a fluke. It wasn't as though DoorDash recognized it and called me. I found out. So at this point, it has been confirmed by DoorDash that I was subjected to missing tips. They left a voice message, or the supervisor in that department left a voice message stating that I had missing tips and also sent the missing tips. And I have the voicemail recording and also a screen capture of those earnings as well. And at this point, you might think, okay, case closed. But it happens to raise other questions. I discovered this by a fluke. Now, am I to believe of my 9,000 plus deliveries that this only happened once? And out of those 9,000 plus deliveries, I just happened to call when that situation occurred. Those are almost, as I mentioned earlier, almost unbelievable odds. And of course, who's to say that this hasn't happened to other DoorDashers as well? And so I wanted answers. And so I decided I was going to try to reach out to DoorDash and ask for an itemized listing of all my deliveries and the payouts maximized by state law. You see, if I received that listing, I could compare it to my own records. For tax purposes, I have always screen captured the pickup location and the drop-off locations as well. Therefore, I can determine the mileage between the two and use that for my tax records. So I called DoorDash, asked for a specific address. I don't know how many departments they have. I've read somewhere around 60, but don't quote me on that. But DoorDash support could only supply me with one address. I looked online, and you can only find one address. Have you ever tried to reach out to a DoorDash attorney or anyone in this home office at California on the phone directly? It's nearly impossible, or that's been my experience. So I have one address. So I composed a letter explaining that I was subjected to missing tips. It was ruled in my favor that I was subjected to missing tips. And therefore, that begs the question of my 9,000 plus deliveries. Could I have also been subjected to other missing tips without my knowledge? So therefore, I made a request for an itemized listing of my earnings, maximized by state law. I sent this as a registered letter. I have a copy of the letter, a copy of the envelope with the registered numbers on it, as well as documentation from the United States Postal Service that that letter was delivered. I've had no response. Now at this point, I know most people would probably just give up, say it's not worth it, but it's a matter of principle. And it's a matter of what's going on with you all as well. I mean, how do I know that this hasn't happened to you all that are DoorDash drivers? How do I know that it hasn't happened on more than one occurrence with me? We don't know those answers. So I've been very relentless about this, and I continue to be. So I've had no answers. So at this point, I have many options. The first, as you can see, is I'm in touch with Joe from Driven Wyld, and he's allowed me to make this available to you all to listen to. My next options, I have many. One of them is, of course, I could go more public, which would mean contacting publications, Time, Newsweek. In fact, if you've done any type of internet searches, you probably know that New York Times has ran many pieces on DoorDash, and not so much in a favorable light. Now, if I could supply if I could supply New York Times with DoorDash recordings, screen captures, everything confirming that what I'm stating is irrefutable, I think that New York Times would certainly want to run with this. The reason I'm a little bit reticent is because once Pandora's box has been opened, what would be the consequences? Well, I could see that people working with DoorDash may be less inclined to do so and work for competitors. People who may be wanting to sign on with DoorDash may be reluctant to do so and sign on with other competitors. Stockholders from DoorDash might start getting a little bit nervous and withdrawing. DoorDash might be subjected to audits, lawsuits, class action lawsuits. I'm not a spiteful person, so it's not as though I'm out to stick it to DoorDash, but at the same time, I also have a situation that is not resolved, and therefore I need to be some form of a squeaky wheel. So I'm not exactly sure how and what direction I want to move forward. So at this point, I'm going to wait until the beginning of the new year, 2025, and then I will take direction. And if any of you have any suggestions on methods I should take, if you're the media listening to this, if you're DoorDash and want to contact me, or anyone else, I welcome you to do so. Let me give you my email address. It's all lowercase. It's all lowercase. It is driverdan, DRIVERDAN 2025. That's driverdan2025 at protonmail, PROTONMAIL.com. So it's all lowercase, driverdan2025 at protonmail.com. Well, I'd like to thank you, Joe, for allowing me this opportunity. Hello to you as well, Bud Soda. And your listeners out there, thanks for listening. I wish everyone a good day. Thanks.
So I'd be very careful what media outlets you do it, because those kinds of publications always try to call us workers, employees. I don't like that he's saying the word workers at all, because it's so easy to throw us in with employees and unions and all that crap. And that's the way they'll always try to classify that. So yeah, but he is aware, because he's saying it's like opening Pandora's box. Like, you got to be super, super careful about how you talk to a media publication and which media publications you even come out to. I would try to start with a more independent source. He's clearly doing that with us, but I mean, someone with more influence that has like millions of followers. I think that, like we said before, you have to document it all. I can think of like at least a dozen times I'm thinking as I was listening to that I feel like I had tips that weren't given to me. Customers said something and it didn't feel right. And it's just like, well, what are you going to do when it's not worth chasing $2? But if everyone documented all of that, it would add up to millions. Like, the recent lawsuit. It's like damned if you do, damned if you don't, because on your personal level, it's probably a giant waste of time unless it added up like a long period of time. Like I have probably over 25,000 deliveries between all apps. Is there probably a few dozen, if not 100 times that's happened? Probably, but I don't know because I haven't documented it. I haven't done an amount of research. It would take you hours, like he spent on what's paltry amount of money for most of us, that would be better spent focusing our energy elsewhere.
He did a good thing by reaching out to us, and you can absolutely reach out to the rideshare guy, the rideshare professor, and all of that. I still say, like, yeah, you can contact an attorney. Yes, document all of that stuff. Yeah, maybe a class action will be in the future, but maybe not. But at the end of the day, nothing will be done without letting it be known that we are under independent contractor. That's a theft. But at the end of the day, the best way to not get your money stolen by DoorDash is to remove your dependence from DoorDash. You're expecting the wrong people to do the right thing. You're expecting people who have been doing this and have continued to do this for years to suddenly change their ways. I mean, you've seen the new programs. Somebody was talking about it on the other stream that was also today, that they changed the Dasher Rewards qualifications for Platinum Driver in some markets, and it's going to only get worse from here. So how do you handle that? You could diversify your gig portfolio so that way you're not using DoorDash as much and they're not stealing tips that way. Same thing with Grubhub and all of these other apps. Yes, you can contact the FTC as well. That also assumes that they're going to actually do something, which in a lot of cases they've proven that they won't. And develop an exit strategy as well. All of these things can and have been things that we are building in the Driven Wyld Discord server. The Driven Wyld Discord community is exclusive for gig workers looking to expand their knowledge and expertise in their self-employment and entrepreneurial journeys. I partnered with high-level professionals to bring you some of the most exclusive benefits based on your needs as a gig worker. Exclusive professional opportunities and gig postings. More live streams with high-level professionals in our industry. Educational systems designed to help you build your own dispatch company, as well as other scalable opportunities. Whether you're a gig worker looking for more opportunities to earn or looking for an exit strategy because the gig economy is an income bridge to what would be a long-term goal and not the goal, and you would like something with more growth and more scalability, there is something here for you. Check the link in the description and get started with making the most amount of money in the least amount of time and in the safest possible way. Look, you could fight for hours with DoorDash, and it would cost you more in your time to actually fight it, which is why I would document a bunch of them, do the whole certified letter thing, maybe that'll help, and then send an attorney after. Maybe at some point there will be a class action again. Like, they've already settled a class action. It's not impossible to beat them. Even with the arbitration agreements, it's not impossible to beat it. But you gotta do it smart. You gotta do it to where it's actually worth it.
Even finding the attorneys who are qualified to do that is very hard. It's not like every attorney can practice in every state, so the ones who've already done it can't necessarily just do it in your state. And getting attorneys who will do commercial law or independent contractor law, they won't take these gig apps seriously a lot of times, so it can be a very tall hurdle to go overcome. So always diversify, look at the Discord, get personal clients, get things going for yourself. There's last mile, there's medical, there's a lot of different stuff out here. And especially if it's pre-scheduled stuff, then all of a sudden these on-demand apps become your go-betweens.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it so much less of a headache, and you're not concerned about, are they stockpiling $10 a day on me, which over time is a lot of money, versus you're doing 100 orders for them a month versus doing 1,000 like how someone like me would. And I think that's the best way to go about it, guys.
This video was made from the Driven Wyld live stream, as we said before. Again, if you want to join us, we are live on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. every single week, and we transition those live streams from YouTube to the Discord at 10 p.m. So make sure you're joining us for both of those events. We have some of the best conversations. Some of them are off the record, so you'll never see them anywhere else unless you're on the Discord. So make sure you're joining us there. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.